little disclaimer before we start today's video. You will notice that we are in Dark Souls 1, and there's a very specific reason for that. This Ashes of War that we're going to be talking about in this video, there's a very specific purpose. They are so powerful now, they are so amazing now. And that is because I need to add a little bit of context. There will be timestamps on the video for you to be able to change to whatever part of the video, because I know that people sometimes believe that you're speaking way too much and you're just not getting to the point. In this specific video, we need some context. I know that a lot of people that play Elden Ring has never played Dark Souls 1, and I want to give you a little bit of context about history and how this used to work back in the day. So we're going to start with that before we start with the actual Ashes of War. So it should be quite a lengthy video, but it should contain a bit of information that I believe it is in your best interest for you to know if you want to know, and I promise you, you're going to enjoy Elden Ring a little bit more from now on. So back in the day, when Souls games were so very popular, one of the most amazing things was building characters. Building a character was the main thing. Back in Dark Souls 1, you would not be able to respec your character. You would go to the store and make your purchase. The dude would say, "Hey, it's a very difficult game." You would say, "I know, dude, I play Demon's Souls." But even then, the build discussion was so interestingly amazing, because there was a lot of people saying there were two major predominances. A lot of people would tell you that it would be best to use an elemental weapon, base elemental weapon, either electricity, chaos, fire, so on and so forth. And the other half of the people would tell you that it would be best to scale a weapon and then use an infusion for spell on it, like Sunlight Blade, Crystal Magic Weapon, Moonlight Blade, so on and so forth. It was so very confusing because back in the day you could mess up your character real bad and there was no turning back. Once you mess up your character, you would have to go back. And back in the day, you needed vitality, you needed endurance, you needed that health. So let me tell you the difference between those two. The first build, which is the one that you are seeing right here, is for an elemental weapon. As you can see, this is New Game Plus as well on Dark Souls 1, and I am doing fairly well against these guys that are actually quite difficult. They are some of the most difficult enemies that you can find in Dark Souls. Right now I'm using a Chaos Halberd, and basically what Chaos do, as you can see right here on the footage, is that it does not matter what kind of stats do you have, it does not matter you have strength, dexterity, neither of that is going to increase your damage. It's always going to have its base damage based on the element. Chaos weapons will have extra damage from humanities, but for example, electric weapons, fire weapons will always have the base same damage. It's never going to change. That was the thing on Dark Souls 1. The problem with that is that there were some elemental resistant enemies, and the thing was not like in Elden Ring where you could swap the element of the weapon at your heart content. If you wanted to swap the element of the weapon, you would have to be wasting resources, because those resources that you would be using to place elements of your weapons were very expensive, not rare. You could farm them, but it would take you way too much. It would take you just too much time, and it was just not viable. So one very popular build was the Giant Dat, which was just a Sui Hander, a regular Sui Hander with electricity on it, electric Sui Hander, and yeah, thanks to that you would be able to place all of your remaining points into endurance and vitality, which were so very important if you wanted to use heavy armor and you wanted to survive with a lot of health. That was one of the builds that you could possibly make. And then you have this other one that I am showing you right now, which is the one that the elite for the Souls veterans would choose, which was to scale a weapon with the base stats and then infuse that weapon with a specific buff. The problem is that it would increase your damage quite substantially. quite a lot, I should like to say. You're going to see that in a little while. But the damage that you would get for increase with this thing would come with a trade-off that you would need to have like a 150 character. Back in the day, that was a real issue. In Elden Ring, not so much, because in Elden Ring you do have the open world and you have more means to level up your characters than you would have in Dark Souls 1. In Dark Souls 1, it would be quite hard for you to reach that level. It would involve a degree of farming, and if you would do like the regular game, the regular playthrough, at the end of your regular playthrough without farming, you would end up being like 80 or 90. So this would be a choice for New Game Plus. Definitely, if you go to New Game Plus, this is something that you would want to use. The problem with it is that the spell would last just way too little. And that spell would just have one charge. You wouldn't be able to cast it several times. So if you wanted to cast it several times, you need to have several of those spells, and you could only get your hands on it one per playthrough, and it could not be dropped. So there you see, that's the issue. Magic weapons are actually a little bit easier, a little bit better, because they have more cast usages. But for example, Sunlight Blade and Moonlight Blade, which are very popular in Dark Souls 1, or were very popular in Dark Souls 1, you would not be able to spam them. Anyways, this is what you would do. Scale your weapon, increase the damage with the stat for that spell. So for example, I am using a katana in here, a Uchi katana. It has a scaling dexterity. I have my 40 points into dexterity, which increases natively the damage of the weapon, and then I have points into fate as well, which increases the damage of the spell. So I'm getting physical damage for the dexterity, and I'm also getting spell buff damage from that Sunlight Blade. That would potentially give you, let's look at numbers right now. These are the numbers that you would have with a chaos weapon. That would always be the case. But now if we swap to my katana, these numbers that you see right here, when I place the buff onto the thing, I increased my damage by 400, nearly 400. Dude, that's amazing. It is not noticeable on backstabs and ripostas, because that damage, I believe, it doesn't count for that. But when it comes to base damage that you would deal to bosses, this thing would just melt away bosses. And if back in the day, if you pair this up with something like Power Within as well as the Uchigatana, this build, I have it right here, because the Uchigatana has also bleed on it. This is a very, very strong build. But as you can see, to be able to make this build, you require deep knowledge of the game. And back in the day, when I was in newbie, I was like, dude, what's all of this about elemental weapons and scaling? Understanding scaling in Souls games, it's very complex. One of my most famous videos is explaining explaining scaling to the folks. And that's because it's a topic that's very interesting to us as players, because we are interested in seeing how are we going to get the most damage out of our favorite weapons. Now let's switch over to Elden Ring. What are these Ashes of War that I am going to show you right now, that I am showing you right now? So amazing and so important. Let's begin with Ashes of War are very complex and cool as well. But there are some Ashes of War that would just neglect your weapon because they are so good that it would end up just be downright better to build up mind as much as possible, which is something that I have done in my many of my builds and many of the builds that our people have out there. They also focus on the usage of Ashes of War, and we forgot about the weapons. And that is a bad thing. That is a bad thing because the replayability value, I do believe that I have seen people complaining that Elden Ring replayability is nearly non-existent, because once you are done with the game, you just are so burnt out and you know where everything is that you do not want to go through it again. I beg to differ, and this is why I made this video specifically. If there is no replayability value, is because we are neglecting the usage of the weapons. Most of RPGs, a build basically means numbers. in Souls games, they were so amazing and the discussion was so good because it wasn't just numbers. There were so many weapons, so many playstyles, so many animations, so many things that you could do that if you start a playthrough with a sword and board, and then your next playthrough would be with a halberd, it would feel so different because you would play so differently, and you would have more assets and you would have less assets. So in Elden Ring we are neglecting that because of the usage of Ashes of War. We prefer to use the Ashes of War instead of the weapons, and we have so many weapons, dude. We have so many weapons that we can use, and they all feel different. They all have different animations. Even weapons of the same category have some different animations. So I decided to make this video to encourage you to try different weapons, and that is why I am going to be showing you as many weapons as I can on this footage for you to see that this is viable, that this is strong, that this is broken. And now let's talk about the Ashes of War. These Ashes of War were useless when the game launched, because if you want to make something like I did on the Dark Souls 1 showcase, it would downright just be better to use the spells on themselves. Electric Blade, fire weapon, scholars, armament, so on and so forth. It would just downright be better to use that instead of these Ashes of War, because they were so underpowered and they were so undershined because of so many other amazing Ashes of War that we had at hand, that we had available to be able to use them. These ones were buffed, all of them. Every single one of them has been buffed in patch 107, and now they are competitive, and now we can use them to make our specialized builds on a specific stat. I'll talk about that a little bit later on the video. But what they do right now is that they increase the damage of the buff. Usually prior to the patch they used to last like 20 seconds, which was laughable. Like, you would have to be casting it and casting it and casting it time and time again. I do believe that they now last like 45 seconds, which is amazing. You could kill quite a lot of enemies before you have to recast it. And even when you recast it, they deal decent amount of damage, strangely enough. Now they, as an Ash of War, independent Ash of War, damaging Ash of War, they reach the 2 to 3k damage range, which is amazing. But that is not what we are going to be using them for. Now, they have increased animation, so now you can cast them faster, and once you are done casting it, you can just get back to your regular weapon. It's going to give more damage to your regular weapon. This was not so possible because of, like I said, they were very crappy. But now that they are amazing, with all of the footage that you are seeing right here, right now, every single weapon has different scaling. And different scalings are going to do different things for you. So you could make a strength build, you can make a dexterity build. The strength build, like I show you with the axe, there's the dexterity build that you could do with a katana, for example, or with a rapier, or with thrusting weapons. And there are so many different weapons that you can use, and these Ashes of War are going to potentialize your build with that specific weapon. You're going to build your character for that specific weapon, and you no longer have to specialize to branch into Intelligence, into Arcane, into Fade to be able to get a buff. Once we specialize into those stats, it's just plain better to use the spells for those stats, and we start neglecting again the weapons that we have. We start using the Ash of War again, of the weapons that we have. So now that these things have been buffed, we have the possibility to be able to build a specific build for a specific weapon that is going to do a specific something with a specific stat, and then we can place this Ash of War into our weapon. Thankfully enough, you don't actually have to be using consumables to change the element of the weapon. So for example, katanas favor dexterity, so you would place a keen affinity on your katana, and then depending on the situation you could place a fire Ash of War, a Holy Ash of War, a Electricity Ash of War, and that is something so amazing as well. Remember the discussion for Dark Souls 1 where you were just locked? For example, my build was a Katana with Fade. I was locked behind Katana and Fade, and some enemies were resistant to electricity. If you find an enemy that's resistant to electricity, you change that Ash of War. You have versatility to be able to leverage the weaknesses of the enemies that you have in front of you. So now you can start using the basic attacks of your weapons while still dealing decent amounts of damage. Like I said, this is New Game Plus 7. Every footage, all of this footage that I have been showing you, like I did place the banner at the beginning of the footage that this is all New Game Plus 7. As you can see, I am on the end game areas of the game and I am working wonders. One amazing thing that you could do also with this Ashes of War, this specific one is for status ailment build up, but with this Ashes of War, if you have power stancing, you power stance your weapons and then you cast the Ash of War of the left one and then swap to the right one, you are going to get a double buff, and that double buff is going to just be more free damage for you. And you could also make some cool looking amazing things, like for example have a fire damage on your left weapon and then a holy damage weapon, and it would be fire on your left and holy on your right, and it's just so amazing. Another amazing thing that you could do is, for example, have cold on your left. It doesn't increase the damage, it just gives you status build up, but cold on your left, and then as soon as you proc cold into the enemy, the fire damage weapon is going to restart the timer for the status build up to be able to build up again. So there's so much versatility that you can have with this new Ashes of Wars, this reworked Ashes of War, that we can actually start using different weapons for different playthroughs. And as you can see right here, right now, it is footage that I have been showing you. It looks different, it plays different, and every playthrough that you try with these weapons, it's going to feel different, it's going to play different, and it's going to give your Elden Ring game so much replayability, and it's also going to make you a monster. Like I said, this is New Game Plus 7. Imagine if you do this in your regular playthrough, it's just going to one-shot every single little enemy that you have in front of you. It won't matter what kind of weapon would you like to use. You're going to be able to use it, and you're going to be able to infuse it with your Ash of War, and you're going to be a damaging truck thanks to this new versatility that Elden Ring offers to us, and you won't have to be branching your build too much into anything else. Just in your basic regular stats that you need for the base scaling damage of the weapon. So thankfully, I hope that with all of this information you can start a new playthrough with a new weapon. I am going to be making several builds. I am going to showcase every single build that I showcase in here that I didn't tell you the stats or anything. I will be making individual specific videos for that, so stay tuned for that. We're going to be looking at all of these weapons. You can suggest your weapons. You can suggest a weapon, an infusible weapon with an Ash of War, of course, not a special weapon, in the comment sections down below, and I can show you how to build it. We can make a build to show you which stats are best for that weapon and how can you leverage the most that weapon. That being said, like always, if you find the information useful, if you find the content enjoyable, a like in the video is super appreciated, and a subscription to the channel as well. Remember that if no one has told you today that you're a gorgeous and beautiful person, you are indeed a gorgeous and beautiful person. Stay safe out there, okay? I'll be seeing you goddamn gorgeous and beautiful people in the next one, and goodbye.